Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Run Your Mouth podcast. We are here bright and early. You know why? Because for the first time in a decade, I did not eat an entire dinner at 3 in the morning. And you know what? Feels kind of nice. It's not a bad lifestyle. Usually what ends up happening is I go to this place in Brooklyn called Williamsburg Comedy Club, and I spend an hour and a half in traffic. I spend an hour and a half, stop, go, stop, going, fuck you, car, I have to pass the airports to get to this comedy club. And then I show up to the comedy club, and I'm all antsy. I haven't looked over it. I had a whole hour and a half to think about what I was going to do when I get there, and I never do that. And then I show up, and I find out I'm going up next. While I was in the car, I'm getting all these texts from people. They're not showing up for the gigs. They are showing up for gigs. Other people want to get on the gigs. You got chaos going on. And I'm like, I don't even want to do this spot. Why did I even show up to this thing? Anyways, I get up on the stage, and then it always goes well. And then you leave, and there's a bakery across the street. And you're like, I got to get back into this car for an hour and a half drive home. I better get some cookies for this ride. And then you eat cookies for your ride. But guess what? It turns out they're not enough cookies. So you stop at a gas station, and you eat more cookies. Do I wish I was kidding? Yes. And then you get home, and you're like, I just ate all these cookies. I should probably eat some protein also. And then you heat up some random Trader Joe's stuff, and then your whole but not last night. I don't know why. I felt a wave of inspiration because of the good spirit of Porch Tour to not eat myself to death at 2 in the morning. And that's why we're fresh here, 10 a.m. with an entire episode. What is up, people? Firstly, off the bat, first Porch Tour out in Florida was, guys, it was wonderful. I don't know that it was the best comedy show I've ever done. I don't even know if it's the best podcast I've ever done. But being back out there on the porches, drinking with random fans till 1:30 in the morning, watching Clint just debate some other random financial dude about whether or not we got to be putting sanctions on China. Where you get nerdy shit like that out on the lawn while drinking beers at 1 in the morning. So thank you for everyone that came out. If you haven't yet decided which porch you're going to make the pilgrimage to, here's the list. It's all around. And, of course, if you're down in Texas this weekend, we've got Childerberg, and we're going to be doing a milk ceremony live podcast. I've lined up all sorts of comedians from Austin, Texas, so come hang out with us. All right, I got a whole bunch of random topics, and then we've got a stacked news show. First thing I'd like to get into is I'm starting to get a little bit afraid of flying. My whole life, I was not afraid of flying. You know, I don't remember why, but at some point when I started flying a little bit more and doing more Porch Tour type gigs, I remember someone told me planes don't go down because of turbulence. So, you know, when you're on a plane and you're feeling all that turbulence and you start getting frightened, it's no big deal. That was in the pre-Boeing doors days. We've already talked about the Boeing doors, and I said, you're not going to scare me out of flying. But let me tell you, I had an incident flying out of West Palm Beach. You're sitting on the runway, and they're like, due to bad weather conditions, we're going to have to sit here for a while. And you're like, Delta, are you about to turn into Spirit Airlines on me? Am I about to sit on this runway for 3 hours because a little bit of rain? And then 45 minutes later, they made the decision, we're clear for takeoff. And so we start taking off, and oh my God. It was so bad. A lady actually got into the aisle and started yelling, we're all going to die. And it was chaotic. You had the kids crying, and you try and just be stone-faced and be like, I'm not bothered by this at all. I'm not bothered by this at all. So by the way, you know, I was talking about this with a friend of mine. Have some dignity if the plane's going to go down. Just sit there and take it. What does yelling and making a scene do? It's not going to do anything. Just have some dignity and just sit there. And then I've never once in my life actually wanted the pilot just to be like, hey guys, we're not dying. I know it's shaking. Like, you know what I mean? You know what should automatically happen? If the plane is shaking enough, the screen in front of you, which they'll take it over for plane announcements. You got to watch this Michael J. White looking character on the Delta video with the biggest smile on his face. Have you guys watched? I don't know. I know you guys don't fly as much as I do, but there's something dystopian about the Delta video where they give you the announcements about being on the flight, but then they recreate all the things that you would do on a flight, but these people that are on this beautiful yoga retreat as if you're not crammed in on a plane. They want to tell you about stowing the stuff under your seat, so they take these beautiful yoga people, they put them out on a yoga retreat, and they recreate all the things that you would do on a plane, but from a beautiful environment to try and make you feel like you're not just crammed on the plane. Can't we just be honest about what's going on here? Anyways, they'll take over your screen monitor to give you information that you don't need. If we all feel like we're going to be dying, can you give me footage of, like, the actual... you know, the pilot? Because that it might be like, I'd like to know, is the pilot calm? Does he also think we're going to die? Is he screaming, yelling, and pulling on random levers? Do we have a woman in there? I feel like this is important information for me to know in the back. Or maybe they put on the screen, and maybe what they can do is they can lie to you, and they can get stock footage. They get that Michael J. White guy that makes all the announcements out on the yoga retreat. You get that guy, and you just put him in the pilot chair, and I get to see him from the back, and he looks calm, and I'm like, all right, it's all fine back here. All right, I got more random topics for you. I was watching this documentary on the plane about this the Donut King. Next time I'm out in California, I got to go to some of these donut shops. I don't know why. Every California trip, I never end up eating any donuts. I've heard about these donuts. You got that big iconic circular donut that's outside one of those California shops. I think it was featured in a Marvel movie. You guys know what I'm talking about. But listen, as you know, I start thinking ahead, trying to plan, maybe actually settling down, having a family. I got a new fetish, which is Cambodian donut women. These women somehow eat donuts and don't age. You guys have to go watch this documentary. They got these 86-year-old women that are still pretty good looking. I'm not saying like they're gorgeous, but like they're pretty good looking. And they've just spent an entire life, they don't just know how to make the donuts, but they claim that they actually eat the donuts. That's the genes that I need for my Jewy kids, that they can somehow process donuts without getting diabetes. I feel like that's something even I can bring back to my Jew mom and be like, listen, I know the lady's not Jewish, but she makes delicious donuts. She's got savings, and they don't get fat when they eat the donuts. And even you can bring that back to the synagogue, and everyone's like, that makes sense. That sounds like that's a genetic upgrade that we need within this community. All right, and then I got just a couple quick etiquette questions, also flight related. They got to figure out, and I know Biden's taking care of this, which means it won't be fixed, but just figure out how to keep families together on planes. Because firstly, if you end up being the person who's stuck with half a family, now you're working out the whole thing. The kids are coming back, they're swapping the seats, you're passing along the snacks, and none of that really bothers me. But what's the etiquette on you watching your movie when you get like some little kid right next to you? You know, you're sitting there, you're like, I'm bored right now. Oh, look, they've got Saving Private Ryan. I'd love to watch the beginning of World War I or World War II and D-Day. And then there's like, you know what I mean? You're sitting there, you're stuck, and you're super bored. And you're like, I could watch this extremely violent or sexual thing, but there's a kid right here. What's the etiquette on that? Is that the parents' fault that they didn't figure out a better seat? Can you assume that the kid's locked in and not peering out the corner of their eye? Because if I was a kid and someone's watching some crazy shit over here, I might pretend like I'm watching my cartoon over here, but you can bet your ass I'm watching the rated R movie over here. What's the etiquette on that? Anyone know? Do we have people that put out etiquette books anymore? If you're a adult and you're sitting in one seat and some bad parent didn't book their flight enough ahead of time to get the whole row, and so you've got the split family situation, or maybe that's on the adult. Maybe the adult can switch the seats. If they put the kid in the middle and they took the window seat, and then you're in the far seat and you're watching something that's not appropriate for the kid, maybe that's on the adult to then switch seats with his kid. You know, like maybe they're left with an option. Do you guys buy that argument? If we were in etiquette court right now and someone said, how dare you watch rated R movies with the child next to you, you could be like, well, the parent was right there and they could have switched seats, so it's on the parent. Are you guys okay with that argument? Because I was sitting there bored, and I was ended up watching the Donut movie and then fantasizing about Cambodian women. All right, last etiquette question for you guys. The Delta Lounge. I've sung high praises for the Delta Lounge. I don't know if there was a way that I could leave Delta Lounge access to my kids as my legacy. That's really, I don't even care about an education for these people. If I have kids, you know, I don't care about them being well educated, running a business. You know, I just want to make sure that I can leave for any offspring I might have on this earth Delta Lounge access, that if for some reason they have the good fortune of being able to afford plane rides to go to places, they can have drinks in the airport, better bathroom access, and decent cookies. That's all I'd like to leave for my legacy. Not a home, not savings for college, not a business, just Delta Lounge access. I don't know if they'll let you pre-buy that. It should be like an insurance product, like long-term insurance. You find 25-year-olds, you start charging them now. You can look at the numbers of how many people aren't going to have kids. What if they do have kids, how often they're actually going to be in airport and making use of the Delta Lounge. Someone could put together this insurance product. This is not a crazy concept. Pre-buying Delta Lounge access for your kids. Anyways, I'm not a person that spends a lot of times in buffet environments. It's too indulgent. I want to go to a sandwich shop, buy my sandwich, buy my cookies, and move on with my life. Yeah, that was a lot of stuttering right there. But the buffet game, I don't go to buffets, and hotels don't seem to have that anymore. I'm very rarely in a buffet environment. And what I put forward to you guys is if you're in Florida and you've got a bunch of old people, how do you guys feel about skipping the buffet line? What is the etiquette on skipping the buffet line? If you're behind the person and they're wasting too much time on the soup, I think here's what I think is the rule. You know, this is why the United States government should hire me for etiquette court. I think if you're going to be going at least 2 full items ahead of where the person in front of you is, or there's no one going to those items, you can skip a buffet line. You can't go 1 item. You can't go, like, in other words, if the person's standing by the soup and the next item's like the hot chicken, you can't skip the soup to the hot chicken. You got to wait behind the person. If you know that you don't want the soup and you know that you don't want the chicken, but then the next item is like prepared sandwiches, so you're going a full 2 items ahead of where the first person is, that's a clean move. Or if you're just going straight for the dessert section, that's a whole totally different section. And if you're on round 2 of food, and so you've got the total layout of what's going on, and you can be efficient enough in the items that you're grabbing, then you might even be able to go 1 item. Like if you're not doing the first browse through, you know that you're just taking this thing and getting the hell out of there, and you can do it cleanly. That's like being at the bodega when you've got exact change and you cut the line. It's a clean move. If you've got exact change, no questions asked, and there's a bit of a line, you're a regular in that establishment, you show them the soda, you put down the exact change, no one gets mad about that. Everyone understands what happened in that transaction. All right, guys, that's it for the random topics. Brought to you by YoKratom.com, home of the $6 kilo, only place in the entire world you can get an entire kilo of kratom for just $60. And I recommend the Reds. It's a nice time, and you can have some very exotic dreams. All right, let's take some comments. We're getting some action in the live chat. Let's start with Runaway Slav. Robbie, you can bring like a dozen airplane liquor bottles through TSA. Is that is that the rule? Is it a full dozen? Because you know what I've started doing is I pack them in my carry-on in the this is very alcoholic-y of me, but it's what I do. If there's a skill that I have in life, it's I like to pretend when I'm in a hotel that it's as if I've gone out to the desert and there are no resources. And so the first thing I do when I roll into a new town is I put on my backpack, I venture out for the closest gas station, and I like to load up on beverages. I'm a good Boy Scout when it comes to hotel rooms and pretending like there won't be, because I don't want to pay the premium for what's in the fridge. And so I'll stock up. I get myself my Red Bulls. I get myself gallons of water. Not even kidding on that. I drink a lot of water. Get myself some beers. But just in case there is no gas station available, I do like to pick up a couple shooters and put them into my bag with my toiletries so that if by some chance, this is real alcoholic math, even though I don't even drink that much these days, but this is real alcoholic planning, that if for some reason the comedy club you're at, which is at a bar, doesn't have drinks or you choose not to drink all night, and then for some reason there's no bars that are open, and then for some reason you weren't able to get a beer or the lobby wouldn't be able to hand you a beer, in case of an emergency, you have your 1 or 2 little bottles of Maker's Mark just to make sure that you don't have to sleep in a hotel room on the road without having a drink before bed. So I see where you're coming from, but are you actually able to get through airport security with 12 of those? All right. David Allen. I wonder what news he's going to talk about. There's really nothing going on in the world, so probably going to be a short episode. David Allen, that is some fake-ass news right there. There is so much to talk about. Runaway Slav, if you're too slow at the buffet line, you're probably too slow, someone skipping you. Yeah, maybe it's just if you're too slow, maybe there should be like little clocks by each item. you step up, and if you're overextending your time, it's not very courteous of old people, though. Like, I think we all understand the old people, they take more time, they're fidgety with the food. It's annoying, but you got to be somewhat respectful of old people. All right, let's get into the news. What do I got going on? Last time, summerporchstore.com. Come hang out at a porch. All right, here we go. What do we got? Let's get this. Oh, no, I went the wrong way with that. All right. What do we got up first? Let's start with... Oh, okay. Guys, sometimes you got to admit when you were wrong. I don't even know if I talked about this yet on an episode, but I thought there is no way that they are going to try and have Joe Biden showing up to debates. I just thought there's absolutely no way, right? If let me pull down this comment. We've seen Biden stutter. We've seen him mutter. We've seen him be lost. Last time, they tried to not even run an election where they pretended like everyone needed to stay in their basements, and they had Biden being, I'm going to restore the soul of the country. I'm more respectful. That's why I stay here. And so now he's got to actually show up unless they boost all the bird flu stuff in our milk. Unless they can really preach to us that there's so much bird flu in our milk, everyone's got to go back to staying at home. It seems like Joe Biden's going to have to actually show up to debates and actually campaign. And so I said, there is no way that they're going to let this guy be on a debate stage. Maybe they've got whatever drug cocktail they're giving him so down to a science. But if not, I thought that they were going to play the card of Donald Trump as a criminal. How dare the Republican Party front this guy as a contender? He's known to the New York State as being a sexual assaulter. He's in trouble for defrauding New York State because of his shady business practices. He's in court, and now we're seeing all of these court cases. They're falling apart. The January 6th one is over because Fani Willis was hired, and she hired a prosecutor who she was making hanky-panky with. And so he was spending all the fancy lucrative contracts going on vacations with the lady. This is all allegedly. Then, of course, he had Jack Smith. And oh my God, was that guy aggressive? He was out there really playing the how dare Trump card, and we're going to get him, and taking the documents. And then it turns out that they were engaged in evidence tampering. And so that one's been suspended. Now you've got the Stormy Daniels one. And that one seems to be falling apart, which we're going to see in a moment. And now you've got Joe Biden so far behind in the swing states, I guess they can't even rig the election. They're like, my God, we are so far behind. There is we don't even have, we don't have enough corpses that could vote. We don't have enough trucks that could show up after the news makes an announcement of who won this election. Guys, we are so far behind in this thing, we don't even think we can rig it. I'm kidding, of course. I don't believe that the last one was rigged. And then they're like, I think Joe Biden's going to have to actually show up and debate. Now, what is the thought process on Joe Biden actually showing up to debate? Is it that he flops and fails so hard that they finally get to pull him out of the election and replace him? Is that the move? Are they trying to get the debates in early so that RFK Jr. doesn't have to debate? Or, I was thinking about this one, maybe Donald Trump is so slick. He threatened Joe Biden, hey, listen, if you don't debate me, I'll just do a debate with RFK Jr. And think about how bad that would make Joe Biden look if Joe Biden's there and he's trying to play the card that I was saying of Donald Trump's a criminal and I can't debate him, and then RFK Jr. shows up and does a good performance. Who do you think would lose more votes there? I bet it's Joe Biden, as the general public becomes aware of the fact that RFK Jr. exists and is a competent human being. So I guess my bold prediction that a debate wasn't going to happen seems to be wrong. It seems like a debate's actually going to happen. And for those of you who wondered as to why I would make such a bold prediction that they wouldn't happen, let's check out Joe Biden from this past week. People in the chat, let me know if we got sound.
And the department has to investigate discrimination aggressively. That's my special envoy to monitor cabinet anti-Semitism, Deborah, you all. Where is it? Deborah here? Deborah, thank you. Lipstadt for furthering our efforts to all around the world. It matters. This matters.
There you go. How is this guy possibly going to get through a debate? And then along the same lines, here is the dream team of the Democratic hacks. yelling about, and this is all the old school people that were yelling about how Donald Trump was a Russian asset. But here they are making sure that the Republicans can't get their hands on the Robert Hur tapes. They are absolutely terrified of the idea of us hearing the testimony that Joe Biden gave to Robert Hur, because we all know that he's got dementia, and behind closed doors, it must be so much worse. If you guys don't remember, Robert Hur was the guy who was investigating the documents that Joe Biden was storing in his garage. You remember the whole thing about classified documents? And he came forward and he was like, I don't think I can put this guy up on the witness stand. I don't think I'll be able to possibly get a judgment against him because he's going to come off like a senile old man. And so, of course, the Republicans were like, well, can we listen to these tapes? Because I feel like if the general public heard these tapes, they would realize how bad of a problem Joe Biden's dementia is, and we could get rid of a guy who's a danger to the country. And so here are the Democrats, of course, furious about the idea that the Robert Hur tapes might even be considered for being shared with the general public. Let's give it a listen.
We can't make a case for any impeachment. There is no high crime. There is no misdemeanor even. And so we will do the next best thing, and we will use this to political advantage by subpoenaing tapes of an interview we already have the transcript for. They want the video for Donald Trump's campaign commercials.
Republicans in the past have used his stuttering to smear him. I think that's what they want to do again with this audio.
Chairman Jordan claims that he needs his records to understand the pauses, pace, and tone of the conversation. This is absurd and clearly pretextual. This isn't really about a policy disagreement with the DOJ. This is about feeding the MAGA base and getting Donald Trump reelected.
I know that the Oversight Committee canceled a hearing that was supposed to happen right now on this matter so that they could be at the president's trial. I know some members will miss this vote because they want to be at the president's trial. And I don't think that anything could animate the phrase, do nothing Congress, more than missing votes and canceling hearings to go up and be a spectator at your cult leader's trial.
Really afraid of the truth. It's just footage of the guy in a deposition. How much dementia does Joe Biden have behind the scenes? How incoherent does he come off? That if we were just to see this man at a simple deposition, you guys are this afraid about true information. This is like yelling, hey, we can't share this data from the CDC. You can't look at the VAERS charts. Don't question the science. Whenever you see these people this panicked about real information, I think you just know what the truth is. All right, let's move on. What do we got next? What do we got next, producer man? Did I skip? All right, and then this was, I thought, kind of telling. This was the latest from corporate press, mainstream media, as the Donald Trump court case falls apart, as it seems like the fellow will not be going to jail. He'll be able to actually get out of court and run an election. Here's what the news commentators had to say.
Until now, no American presidential race had been more defined by what's happening in courtrooms than what's happening on the campaign trail. Until now. The scale of the abnormality is so staggering that it can actually become numbing. It's all too easy to fall into reflexive habits, to treat this as a normal campaign, where both sides embrace the rule of law, where both sides are dedicated to a debate based on facts and the peaceful transfer of power.
And we play that every day from now to Election Day. A sobering reminder from someone who knows, someone who worked on and has covered now. And
this is all they have. Remember, this just isn't normal. The fact that we had a Justice Department create 6 court cases, creating their own news, we've never had a president with this yet because we've never had a guy that the system hated so much. We've never had someone who had to be in court every single day. And remember, this isn't normal. And here's what's so great about all this. Biden is so bad that nobody cares. Nobody cares. At this point, you could have all the evidence in the world of how much of a scumbag Donald Trump is. You can actually have the evidence that he's a Russian asset. And you know what people are thinking? Hey, are Russian assets good at bringing down grocery prices? Listen, I don't care. I don't care if we need to import an entire squad of Russian hookers to pee on this guy at a nightly basis, and whether or not he gets on the phone every single night and he talks to Putin. Are you telling me that my grocery prices are going to come down? At this point, nobody cares. You guys can bring all the court cases against him. You can let the world know how much of a scumbag he is. And by the way, we're going to get into, it's not that I like Donald Trump. I'm just saying at this point, Biden is objectively so bad and people are so upset with what's going on. Nobody cares about this nonsense anymore. And sure, you guys can try and preach it to your core audience and go, guys, remember, aren't we really upset with this guy? Isn't it just so bad? Because here was the thing, the last time around, they made a temper tantrum like a child. They made a temper tantrum about the fact that Donald Trump was in office. They wasted 3 years of our life yelling about the fact that there was that he was a Russian asset, and then they spent the last 2 years of his thing getting everyone to do the COVID, and then they went, guys, we can return to normal. And now normal was just people not having a temper tantrum. That was what they go, we can just return to normal. And then you got Biden who came in, and nothing worked out all that great. They went, we're going to have an adult back in the room. The rest of the world is going to respect us. We're going to be back to that country that and guess what? You figured out, you're like, we're not back to normal. And now you guys can just not have a temper tantrum over here. And then we could be back to having conversations about the actual issues as opposed to just the constant chaos. But here you are. It's the best they've got. It's the best they've got of, guys, we're going to have to go back to us having a temper tantrum unless you go with the senile old guy. All right. And then this is the Donald Trump New York City court case falling apart. Trump won't testify in New York money hush trial. It seems like at this point, he doesn't have to. It seems like the case is over. Amidst the reasons why the case is over is it turns out that Cohen was actually stealing money from the Trump organization. Remember, as there was a lot of reporting and stuff that wasn't actually a crime, it seems like the entire case, and I might be wrong about this, but it seems like the entire case was contingent on Michael Cohen being able to give testimony to Donald Trump engaging in some sort of an illegal activity of campaign finance fraud. Now, obviously, if you're sitting down with your lawyer and you're like, hey, do this in the legal way, and he does it in the illegal way, that would be on him. But I guess if you actually sat down and he could give testimony to the fact that you had that it was your idea and your instructions to do the illegal thing, which still I'm not 100% sure on what the illegal thing is. I'm not entirely sure why the payments to get rid of the story, while it would help you in your personal life, and yes, also I guess affect your campaign, and why hush money payments, which aren't illegal, and you're allowed to try and win elections. So anyways, the technicals on what the crime is confusing, and the entire court case and Stormy Daniels getting back up there and talking about staring at the roof and then lying and pretending like it wasn't consensual when she had previously said it was consensual. Forget all the nonsense of all that. You need a person to actually testify to there being a crime. And that's a guy who had previously gone to jail, was then caught lying in terms of, or at least could not exactly recall the timing of the conversation or who he had spoken to, the exact thing that he has to give testimony to. And then he admits the next day that he was actually stealing from the Trump organization, and not just stealing from the Trump organization, but stealing them from them on like these types of transactions, which would then be hard to say, well, then Donald Trump clearly was in charge of this and gave clear instructions and knew what was going on. Because, I mean, how do you give testimony in court against a guy that you were just stealing from? I would think that would discredit you as being an honest and fair witness. And then you had, this was just such a spectacle. It's worth reading. So Donald Trump, I guess their team, they only brought one person in for the defense. And I was reading headlines today. Haven't read today's news yet. Today's news will be covering at Childerberg. Haven't gotten into it yet. But they had this guy, and it just seems like it was a real spectacle where he was giving testimony against Cohen, or I guess at earlier moments in time, Cohen had told him that he didn't have any incriminating evidence against Trump. And this guy was just sitting in court, staring the judge down to the point that the judge had to dismiss everybody to yell at him. And he's not on trial, so I don't really know what happens when you have witnesses who are just pissing off the judge. It's kind of funny. Can you hold a witness, like a witness who's there? Does he, or do you then end up punishing? I don't know. I don't watch enough courtroom drama shows to tell you guys, but I always enjoy just a good courtroom spectacle that includes Donald Trump, and this was as good of a spectacle as you could have. Let's give this a read. An attorney who represented Michael Cohen testified Monday that Donald Trump's fixer-turned-foe had told him that ex-president knew nothing about the hush money payment to porn star Stormy Daniels moments before irking the judge by rolling his eyes and muttering on the stand. So that's direct testimony against Cohen, but I don't know the latest. I don't know what happened today. This was from yesterday. Robert Bob Costello, the second witness called by Trump's lawyer at his Manhattan criminal trial, so I guess he's not the only witness, contradicted previous testimony by Cohen that the real estate mogul was aware of the deal to pay Daniels $130,000 to silence her story about having a tryst with him. Once again, being aware of the payment shouldn't be a problem. It would be in specific instructions to not do it in the legal way. You're allowed to make payments. If the problem was the way the payments were processed, even that's not a crime. You see how far, at least in my head, it seems like we're just removed from actual crimes? Anyways, let's continue. Michael Cohen said numerous times that President Trump knew nothing about those payments, that he did this on his own, and he repeated that numerous times, claimed Costello, a Trump ally who last week bashed the prosecution case in front of Congress. The judge then excused the jury to lecture Costello about proper decorum inside his courtroom, telling him that if he doesn't like a ruling, you don't say, geez. That's fine. You know, you're in my courtroom, you just got to take it. None of the muttering, none of the show. You just got to take it. If you don't like my ruling, you don't give me side eye and you don't roll your eyes, he said before accusing the witness of staring him down. Are you staring me down right now? The judge fired. Are you staring me down right now? Clear the courtroom, the judge said, briefly forcing reporters out into the hallway. Behind closed doors, the judges laid into Costello and threatened to remove him from the stand, according to a court transcript. There you go, the latest shenanigans from the Trump court case. All right, before I play this next video, let's take a moment and thank another one of our sponsors, sheathunderwear.com. Guys, it is summer. You've got some sweaty balls. You might be flying on airplanes. You might be in all sorts of situations that you don't want your cock and balls flopping all over the place and sticking to your legs. So let me tell you, there's a cure to swamp ass, and it's at sheathunderwear.com. Use promo code RYM. You'll get yourself 20% off the greatest underwear that's ever graced the balls of man. And you got Father's Day coming up. Your dad, if you got an old school dad, he's probably got balls. He probably doesn't even know that there's new sheath underwear technology with moisture wicking cooling technology and a compartment that you can safely stash let your dad know, hey, listen, my balls are getting droopy and you've got like 30, 40 years on me. You must have some real droopy nuts. So I bought you some sheathunderwear.com and I used Robbie the Fire's promo code RYM to get yourself 20% off. I actually Robert texted me the other day with like a Father's Day super promo code, which I'll have on the next episode. All right, I don't even know if this was sometimes the problem with endlessly scrolling Twitter for random news topics is that you don't know how recently something transpired. But as people get all excited for Donald Trump, they go, look, he's finally getting out of his court cases. And I certainly think that he's better than Biden. I think it's good to remember how spineless he is and how little he's able to do to actually stand up to the deep state and how little he actually cares for you and how it's all about him winning and being able to have the title. And I think this video really showcases that. Let's give it a watch.
In terms of talking about this corruption, by the way, a name that comes to mind in the news recently is Julian Assange. You know, he was exposing this corruption early on. He's had his life ruined because of it. It's a really sad story. Edward Snowden. I mean, think about that bravery. For me, I was quite young when that was going on. But I mean, the idea of saying, hey, whistleblowing, actually, we've got some corruption going on. They're not being honest with the American people. You could have had a chance to pardon these individuals. Why decide not to in that moment?
You have two sides of it. In one case, you have like sort of a spy deal going on. And in another case, you have somebody that's exposing real corruption.
Right.
I feel a little bit, I won't say which one, but I feel a little bit more strongly about one than the other.
Right.
And you probably understand that.
Mm-hmm.
But I could have done it, but I will say you have people on both sides of that issue, good people on both sides, and you have some bad people on one side. But I decided to let that one ride, let the courts work it out.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the courts are actually doing that.
Yeah, these are big decisions.
Yeah. In a certain way, you know, you have a country and there was some spying things and there was some bad things released that really set us back and really hurt us with what they did. You understand that.
Mm-hmm.
There are people on both sides of the issue, and it would force me to actually maybe lose some political capital and actually do something, make a decision about my own beliefs, make a decision about what's actually moral and right here, actually take a stand that might help other people. And when I realized that I might have to actually do something for someone else and that there might be consequences for it, I realized, you know what? Why don't I just leave this one for the courts? Why not just do what's safe? And and by the way, in that case, when you're having troubles with the deep state, if anything, if you actually care about maybe a show of force, putting those people into check for the next time around and not just playing ball when you get threatening calls from McConnell or other people and actually exerting your political power a little bit more, well, I don't even think that it helps Trump's case. All right, let's continue. We got more topics. We got more going on. We're only on slide 9 of 19. This is a stacked episode, everybody. All right, out in the Middle East, there was a technical failure that caused a helicopter crash that killed Iran's president, state news agency reports. Anyone think that this guy's helicopter just crashed? I mean, it could be. You got mountains, you got fogs. We all see what's going on Boeing planes, and that's with the greatest nation that ever existed on Earth. You've got Iran under sanctions. What kind of helicopters are these guys working with? Would they buy old Vietnam stuff for us? Were we getting along with them in Vietnam? I don't know. Where does Iran get its helicopters from? Are they building their own helicopters? And even Kobe Bryant, he had a helicopter go down. He had a good American helicopter. Even so, people do die in helicopters. What do you guys think? I think we all know what we think. But this is the cool movie shit. You know, like if they got a Mossad and they're able to go and blow up helicopters, they're able to write software that messes up the turbines, that gets you to actually enrich uranium. I'm all for the movie shit. I'm all for the special forces operations where elites go after elites. Now I get it. You guys are like, this is still escalatory. You're like, yeah, look at the history. Look at what happened in World War I and the assassinations that led to war. But I'm like, just if you guys want to go after each other and do mafia shit where your mob boss takes out their mob boss and you're keeping the civilians out of it, go ahead. That's the cool stuff. And that's why the war machine has lost all of our support. It's because they don't do the cool movie shit. Tell me about the operations. Have your SEAL Team 6s go out to other parts of the world, rescue kids, take out drug lords, make sure that the Houthis aren't taking out fishing lanes. Just keep the civilians out of it. Just don't be arming the Saudi Arabian planes to be blowing up and causing famines in Yemen. But you want to send special forces in there and actually take out like their people and stuff that would make for a great Hollywood film? I like Hollywood films. We root for you if you guys actually go out there and you take out bad guys. If you actually use all of your equipment to protect infrastructure, and all right, I get it. Well, who gets to label who the terrorist is and what's a freedom fighter and what's a this? I'm just saying, if the elites want to do some mafia shit and take out the helicopter of the people that they don't like, good. You want to go after the other world leaders and keep us out of it? I'll root for that. That's a fair compromise. You guys want to play the game of war with each other, but it doesn't involve us? Have at it. And if you guys are such badasses that you figured out how to get into Iran and, take out one of their helicopters, I mean, listen, do I think you could probably be getting along with Iran? Do I think this helps the people over there, your people? You could probably figure it out. But I'm just saying, if you're not going to be blowing up the buildings of kids in Gaza, but you actually figured out a way to get at the leader, that's the better of the two. All right, let's take a couple comments here. We've got Tucker Dixon backing up my approach here and saying, hell yeah, dude. Thank you, sir. Native Texans. Iran makes a lot of UAV drones. They know a little about that. My money would be on foul play, but we'll probably never know for sure. It may have just been an accident, but I doubt it. All right. War Hell Ride. It's kind of like battle bots for the Sand People. I don't even really know what that means. Seems fishy. Anybody would take a head of state out of a helicopter in dense fog. All right. And then we've got the International Criminal Court prosecutors request warrants for Netanyahu and Hamas leaders. I know nothing about the International Criminal Court. I never heard about beforehand. Maybe it's an irrelevant court. has no jurisdiction. No one's ever cared about it. Suddenly they're against Israel and it makes headlines. Or maybe that's the exact court that usually deals with war crimes. I know nothing. Sometimes there's some organization you never heard of, and all of a sudden it's all the papers. And you're like, why is this in all the papers? And then, of course, you got Netanyahu going, it's because of the anti-Semitism. Well, why do they just turn into anti-Semites now? If it's just that they've always been anti-Semites and they're against the state of Israel, then why wouldn't they just declare this because if there's no reason for it whatsoever, and it's just because it's easy as anti-Semites to go, hey, that guy's guilty of a crime, let's go get him, and it has nothing to do with the actual crime being being committed, then why didn't they just do it 10 years ago? Why didn't they do it 5 years ago? If they were just anti-Semites and they're just, how come you're the only one that they've done it against? I mean, if these guys are just anti-Semites and they're just throwing up crimes against Jews, it must be at a minimum that you've created enough bad press about yourself that they feel like they can do this and get away with it. And that your political clout is at least weakened enough that they have, and I think that's the most telling part. Not saying that I know nothing about this court, but I do think him having to get out there and contend with the fact that a court wants to say that he should be tried for war crimes, and he gets to go, how dare you compare me to that guy? That's the it already changes the reality a little bit, that you can't just how dare and confidence your way out of the situation and just go, because I think everyone kind of sees what's happening. Oh, all right. This is a longer video that we have to play. I thought that this was fascinating. I don't agree with Ted Cruz's opinion at all here. Ted Cruz, sometimes he seems like the smartest guy in the room, and then sometimes he seems like, just the biggest deep state kook. When it seems like with the Nord Stream Russia thing, he was all in on, hey, I've got Texas oil companies over here. We've got to go take out that pipeline, or we got to oppose Russia. We can't have Russia trading with Germany. And in this video, he seems to be taking the full line support. We got to be on Israel's side. We got to make sure that they have all the weapons they need. And so I don't agree with Ted Cruz's opinion here in any capacity. With that said, Blinken's admissions are pretty incredible considering some of the news coverage that we've seen. We know that Biden's having a trouble in this election, swing states in Michigan. The liberal kids on these college campuses, they don't like what's going on in the Middle East. They don't like the situation out in Gaza, and he's got to contend with it. And so he keeps pretending, I told him not to do that. I told him I wouldn't support them. And he keeps pretending like he's withholding aid, or he's withholding the new weapons, or he's doing this, he's doing that. And the whole time behind the scenes, it seemed like they would rebuke them and then go, hey, listen, you guys can't be bombing the civilians. And then they'd send more missiles. And they go, oh, we really don't like what's going on. And then hush, hush, they'd be like, hey, here's all the shit you need to go kill some people. And so we've been saying that. I think I'm part of the problem. We've been saying that they keep pretending like they're trying to oppose this thing. And then on the side, they're like, hey, listen, don't go and kill anyone, but here's a gun. Hey, don't be out there threatening people with that gun. Here's another gun. It seemed like that's what was going on. And then we saw recent reporting here where the Biden administration was really going ham and saying, you guys can't go into Rafah. We're going to withhold new aid if you guys, or new weapons if you go into Rafah. Don't be going into Rafah. We saw all sorts of news stories about the Biden administration actually standing up to Israel if they went into Rafah. And then here, I guess under the threat of lying to the Senate, which I believe you can get in trouble for, we have a very different story coming from Blinken, that basically all of the reporting that the Biden administration wasn't going to send aid has all just been lies of the media. And let's give this a listen.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator. Mr. Secretary, you have presided over the worst foreign policy disaster of modern times. When Joe Biden became president, he inherited peace and prosperity in the world. We now have two simultaneous wars waging the world.
Prosperity might be a little bit of an overstatement. He did come into COVID and a lot of spending and those supply line issues. I don't know that prosperity is a fair word. Peace, maybe you can make an argument that there were less wars, but I don't know that prosperity is a bit of an overstatement.
Worst war in Europe since World War II and the worst war in the Middle East in 50 years. Both, I believe, were caused by this administration's consistent weakness. And indeed, your foreign policy is precisely backwards from what a rational American foreign policy should be. To our friends and allies, this administration has consistently undermined, weakened, and attacked them. And to our enemies, this administration has shown constant appeasement and indeed has flowed billions of dollars to the enemies of America who want to kill us. Senator Barrasso asked you about Ibrahim Raisi. Your State Department put out a statement sending condolences for his death. Mr. Secretary, is the world better today now that Raisi is dead?
Given the horrible acts that he engaged in, both as a judge and as president, to the extent he can no longer engage in them, yes, the Iranian people are probably better off.
You didn't say that in your statement, did you?
I believe that we did. And certainly our spokesperson...
Today, the United Nations is flying their flag at half-staff to mourn the death.
So far, just to interject, I didn't mean to play this part. I have no problem with any of this. Thus far, you know, the Ted Cruz shenanigans, it's fine. I agree with him on this part. Doesn't bother me. Just trying to, you know, yeah, he's got Blink in there, and he might as well stir up some shit of, hey, why don't you guys go fight the UN? And he's like, I don't know, we got a guy with dementia here, and like we're trying to win an election, and everyone's kind of annoyed with us. You know, how many problems are we gonna try and cause over here? So this part doesn't really bother me that much. The next part is what I was referring to when I gave the introduction, but let's continue.
Would you agree that it is utterly disgraceful for the United Nations to be mourning the deaths of the butcher of Tehran?
We're certainly not mourning his death. As I said, we expressed...
Would you agree it's disgraceful for the UN to be?
I'll look at what they've done. We certainly would not do that.
What they've done is flown the flag at half-staff. Is that disgraceful?
We wouldn't do that, and we would certainly find that...
And I would note that's the absence of American leadership. All right, let's shift. The Washington Post on May 11th wrote an article. I'm going to read the opening paragraph. The Biden administration, working urgently to stave off a full-scale Israeli invasion of Rafah, is offering Israel valuable assistance in an effort to persuade it to hold back, including sensitive intelligence to help the Israeli military pinpoint the location of Hamas leaders and find the group's hidden tunnels, according to 4 people familiar with the U.S. offers. Is that paragraph accurate?
Exactly the opposite. First of all, no one has done more to defend Israel than Joe Biden.
Is that paragraph
let me finish, if I may, please. He was there right after.
I'm not interested in a campaign speech. I have limited time. Is the paragraph in the Washington Post accurate?
This part I like, by the way, because sometimes I agree with Cruz when he's attacking people, and he's good at this. And I like the just boss mode, cut the guy off, and this is good tactics. Just don't give me the bullshit and answer my question. Doesn't let him get away with screaming around, but also I don't agree with Cruz's position here, and he does get to the truth.
Accurate.
Which is that the Biden administration is just full support.
As you read it, no. To the contrary, we're providing everything we possibly can to Israel to help them find.
So the 4 sources that briefed the Post, and by the way, briefed multiple other media outlets, they were lying?
Absolutely.
So, all right, so that, did the administration offer to provide the locations of senior Hamas leaders to Israel if they didn't invade Rafah?
That's, again, totally misleading and wrong. Here's what we've said, and here's what we're doing. We have said that there is a better way to deal with the challenge that...
I'm not interested in the speech.
If you don't want to hear my answer...
Did you offer the location of senior Hamas officials if they didn't invade Rafah? That's a yes or no.
If we had the locations, of course we'd provide them, irrespective.
So this statement, you're saying the Post got it totally wrong, it is utterly false, and anyone who said to the contrary was lying and perjuring themselves if they were under oath.
That statement is incorrect. We have done and will continue to do everything we can to, if we can do it, develop the information and share the information. I wish we had it.
Does the administration have intelligence on the location?
Which, by the way, not taking issue with any of this yet, because I guess if you actually had the exact location of leadership, and so I guess Israel could take, or maybe I mean, that would be a good move, is to publicly go, hey, we told them where they can find the people who are actually responsible for this, and therefore they don't have to kill any civilians or engage in these other military activities. Can you imagine if we had that information, we didn't share it?
Locations of Hamas officials that you have not shared with Israel?
No.
Does the administration have the locations of Hamas terror tunnels that you have not shared with Israel?
No.
Okay, so then your position is that this story is an utter and complete lie.
As you've read it to me, Senator, it's not. It is not accurate.
And we're not interested in playing word games. I've asked you very directly.
I have
So
not.
you're saying there's not a single Hamas leader that you know about that you or the administration has offered will tell you where they are if you don't invade
That is correct.
Rafah. What have you offered them not to invade Rafah?
We've offered them nothing not to invade Rafah except a plan to deal more effectively with Rafah.
Okay, so
to
your
deal with their
testimony
invading
under
Rafah.
oath is you've offered them nothing not to invade Rafah. I find that very hard to believe, but I just want to understand what your testimony is.
I'll be very clear. We have told them, we've been engaged in a long conversation with them about the most effective way to deal with the problem we agree must be dealt with.
They
That
are
is
quite
Hamas
aware
and
you
Rafah.
disagree with their plan to kill the Hamas terrorists because
That's
you and the
absolutely-
president have vocally
that is
said it. And to be
absolutely
clear,
wrong.
your State Department on the morning of October 7th sent out a tweet telling Israel not to engage in military retaliation. I called you out at 3 in the morning and you deleted that tweet. The next day, you personally on October 8th sent a tweet saying you had spoken with the Turkish foreign minister and Israel should not
I think we're getting to the
retaliate.
withholding
From
aid part
the very
here.
beginning,
Should have
the
timestamped
Biden
this better.
administration has consistently at every stage told Israel, and by the way, when I called your tweet out, you deleted it again. At every stage, you have been telling Israel, do not kill the terrorists, and that has been from day one.
Senator, I was in Israel 5 days after October 7th. I've been there 7 times since. No one, starting with President Biden, has done more to make sure they have what they need to defend themselves from Hamas, to deal with the threat that Hamas poses.
With
to
all
make
due
sure that
respect, that is
simply wrong.
ludicrous. That is ludicrous. Why have you cut off weapons to Israel then?
We have not cut off weapons to Israel. In fact, as you know well, starting many years ago, President Biden was at the heart of the MOU that led to Israel having a 10-year guaranteed supply of assistance. When
you became
very important to its defense.
when you became Secretary of State, how much oil was Iran selling a day?
I'll have to come back to you on any numbers. I don't have the numbers.
You don't know. It doesn't surprise me you don't know. It was about 300,000. How much oil is Iran selling today?
We've applied.
Maybe I overstated that. Yeah, if I edited the show and didn't go live, maybe that wasn't worth being played, because I guess technically I'm right that he did just say we have not cut off arms, but it could be that the recent reporting. I guess that's what I was saying, is that while there've been reports they were going to withhold arms, at least under testimony, he's saying that they haven't done so. All right, we got a couple. We got more stuff. The rest is more focused, except I don't know what this next video is. As I claim that the next one won't be as much of a meander.
People's Republic of China.
He is a war criminal.
Oh yeah. Somehow someone managed to get in during this to yell. I don't know how that happens. Do they just set that up? Do they have a person just ready to go? They're like, this is your cue, you get to go in there. But look at Blinken's face where he's like, shit, this isn't going to look good. He's like, this isn't the way propaganda is supposed to work. You're not supposed to see the people that are upset with our policies. This didn't happen during COVID. You never saw Fauci going, hey, your vaccine did this to my person. I lost my job because of you. And you could see it on his face. It's fun seeing how upset his face is of like, why do I have to deal with this?
People's Republic of China.
He's like, come on, people. You know, I'm doing my propaganda part here. You guys got to do your part of not exposing me to these people that the entire country's supposed to agree with me, and that's supposed to be what I'm conveying to the world. All right, this is an odd story, but the crew stuck aboard, this is from the New York Post, the crew stuck aboard ship for 55 days without personal cell phones after Baltimore bridge collapse, facing tough time, fear they'll face blame. So apparently the ship, it's mostly or all foreign workers. they had their cell phones taken from them, and they haven't been able to leave the ship. And now, the reasons that the FBI is claiming for why they had to take all their cell phones is not that they don't want them communicating with people. In fact, there's claims that they've gotten new cell phones. Just the data on their cell phones when the incident happened, I guess, is now for the FBI. I don't know what could have been on all these people's phones while the incident took place, but they all needed their phones taken and they all needed to stay on the ship. And now the reason why they needed to stay on the ship is that there's some sort of a law that giant boats in the ocean need to be fully staffed, even if they're wedged into a bridge, even if like the staff is already messed up in the most horrible of ways and the thing is no longer sailing in the ocean. There's some sort of a law that those people, and I guess the company is not able to swap them out. But doesn't that sound a little bit shady? That the one that we saw just magically turn on a dime, go right into the bridge, is fully staffed, not fully staffed, but 55 of these people have been stuck on the boat and they're not allowed their original cell phones. The 21 crew members stuck on the ship, which caused the deadly Baltimore bridge collapse, are reportedly having a tough time not being able to leave the vessel for 55 days. The crew, all from India except for one man from Sri Lanka, has been forced to stay on board since the March 26 disaster, which brought down the Francis Scott Kelly Key Bridge and killed 6 construction workers. During that time, they have scrambled to find survivors of the accident, had their phones confiscated by FBI agents, and endured multiple controlled explosions to break apart a huge chunk of bridge stuck atop the ships below. It's been tough for the seafarers, primarily because they know there's been loss of life, said Chui Guandwan, Assistant General Secretary of the Singapore Maritime Officers Union, one of the unions representing crew members on the Singapore flagship, CNN report. It's tough for them being on board and having to look at the accident site every single day. U.S. maritime rules stipulate ships must maintain a minimum staffing at all times at any time machinery aboard is running, so crew can be available to respond if something goes. It already went wrong. It already went wrong. What more is going to go wrong? You're already wedged into a bridge. All right, the crew situation has become further complicated while they've been trapped because U.S. visas they're carrying, allowing them to leave the boat, have expired. That's a fun predicament to be in. Doesn't that sound like something that you can easily solve if you didn't want the people trapped on the boat? Doesn't it sound like you found the most technical rules to keep them trapped? And then why is it that you want them trapped on the boat? I mean, this kind of sounds to me like when they had to take down the shipping containers because of the wildlife. The wildlife needed to cross the border. Sounds to me like you found the most technical reason to get the result that you were looking for more than it was an absolute requirement. You know what I mean? Like visas, I don't know. It's not something that you got to go travel to Middle Earth on some magical journey to find and then go, oh, look, I was able to bring back this little precious stone. And so now you're released from, it's a visa. You guys could just print the visas. You could expedite it. You could go, oh, wow, we fucked up when you had your boat crash into a bridge and you were on a short-term visa. That now, like, doesn't that almost sound like they were set up to be trapped? So you gave them, like, why were their visas already expired after just what do they get, 40-day visas? Or they were at their end of the run? All right, let's continue. The cargo freighter regained buoyancy on Monday morning as part of a huge team effort by the United Command, a coalition of various U.S. authorities, and was moved away from the wreckage, but the crew is still required to stay put on board for now. Officials with Synergy Marine, which owns the Dolly, have reassured they are keeping the crew well supplied, and the 20 men of the ship are kept busy with maintenance and other work while aboard. They also noted shipmates have been given access to mental health services. You guys go, the second half of the article, they walk it back, and they're like, well, they were given cell phones, and this and that. But the fact that the FBI had to take their original cell phones, and that they've been, I don't know, it seems a little bit shady. All right, I'm going to skip this one. Not that interested in it. All right, this was making the rounds yesterday. You know, sometimes you see people on these yoga retreats. You know, everyone's being sold on new modern age therapy. And then sometimes you see it in action, and you're like, this looks ridiculous. And people were wondering, how could there be a situation this ridiculous of these women coming together to shout at the woods and bang sticks at the ground? And I'm here. I actually have an explanation for what happened here. So just to show you guys what was taking place, because you guys don't waste as much time on Twitter looking for random topics for the show. That's why you come here. You're not in the know of what everyone in the world is talking about. So this was the big sensation. Who knows? But everyone was all curious what was going on here, and I've got the inside scoop. And so what was going on here is these are all the women that went on Tinder dates with me last year and decided not to sleep with me. And now this is their regret retreat for not, this is what happens. I just want the world to know that if you just go for it. All right. And then I got one last one. This was also ridiculous and, totally not the classy news that we usually discuss. But at the end of a NASCAR event, there was a fight. And this gives me an idea for how to make all sports more interesting. Let's give it a watch. Fireworks thing's a little annoying. I like that, like yelling at a bear. Get out of here, boy! Get out of here! I think, obviously, I'm not a big fan of NASCAR, or at least I haven't really watched all that much NASCAR. Here, give me a second here. I can change up the screen. But if you're not knowledgeable of racing, you're watching the racing for the crashes. It's the most exciting part of the sport. Or if you don't watch racing, but then you hear that there was an epic crash, you're going to watch. And yeah, does that say something terrible about us as human beings, that we like seeing other people when they're close to death or in deathly situations? Of course, but it's a spectacle. It's a spectacle. And you're lying to me. If I told you, hey, there was a 25-car pileup, you're going to watch that every single time. And you make this sport even more interesting is if somebody crashes your car and then if the sport was actually then you go fight them. If this was the sport, now I understand fighting's a separate sport, but like in hockey, it kind of polices the game. It makes the sport better because if you're enough of a dick to somebody, you're going to have to go fight the biggest guy on their team. If you keep slashing and checking and playing dirty, it polices the sport. And so here, if you're going to check someone else's car into the board and wreck their car, you're going to have to fight them afterwards. I feel like that would probably make NASCAR a better sport. If you crash somebody's car, and by the way, you're talking about fighting more dangerous than having your car crashed on the race course. I feel like this should be a part of NASCAR. If you crash my car, you're gonna have to fight me. Now you might argue, well, that's gonna ruin the whole sport because some of the best drivers aren't gonna be the best fighters. Well, maybe then you could do the hockey thing where you get a second guy in your squad and then he fights the guy in that squad. Or maybe that's the way it works. You got to fight. It's the way it is. You want to be in your car, you want to be racing, and you want to be doing things that's going to crash other people's cars. Unless maybe the problem could be is that you end up with a really spectacular driver who just wants to fight people. And I guess that wouldn't work. All right, listen, I talked myself out of another thing on the show. That's what happens. It's another thing. If we edited it, if we weren't live, I would have gone, oh, you know what? That was a really stupid and shitty idea. I should just take it out, and then everyone will still think I'm super smart. But listen, guys, none of that's important. You know what's the most important? Doesn't this kind of look like we set Bernie Sanders on fire? Doesn't that kind of look what LVMP? He did a great job with this one. He did a great job with all the artwork. Anyways, come out for Porch Tour, summerporchtour.com. We're going to be at Porches nationwide. Might still add some more dates. Atlanta, that's the only one. It doesn't have a ticket link yet because the porch fell through. If someone's got a porch in Atlanta, if not, I'm going to play a fucking truck stop, all right? I'll just roll up with my equipment. I'll let people know what the truck stop is. If you're into glory holes, you can go do that afterwards. Maybe everyone can go inside, get themselves a whole big handful of snacks. We can make it a truck stop porch tour snack party. All right, that's the show. Thanks for hanging out with us. Looking forward to Childerberg. If you're out in Texas, come hang out. If you're going to be down at the Libertarian National Convention, I'm going to be there Thursday doing the shows with Dave Smith. Friday and Saturday I'm in Texas, but I am going to come back on Sunday We'll see. I'm planning. I have a flight 7 in the morning. I don't have a hotel room in Austin. I am planning on drinking till 4 in the morning and going directly to the airport and hopefully sleeping on that flight. And I thought I'd be landing in DC to drive home until I heard that Ron Paul is showing up, and then I was like, I'm pretty sure I gotta go. I gotta go back. So I'll probably be back on Sunday, hanging out. And that's it. All right, let's take some comments. We might be wrong. We definitely waste as much time on Twitter as you, Robbie. Well, then send me the good clips. robsnewsroom@gmail.com. If you guys are coming across the good, maybe I can make like a shared folder or a website where fan contributions of the Twitter clips you'd like to hear me comment on the show. And then I could potentially get rid of my phone and not even waste the time on Twitter. All right. Evil Fandango. Whoa, looks like they're trying to scare bears away and men. Accurate. That's a funny way of learning to make sandwiches. Fair enough. Fuck, he was vaxxed pure sperm. Porch store posters. Art is kick-ass. I think... Listen, I got lazy. I started going on all these websites trying to get this. Actually, I was trying to get the kind of piranha-looking Run Your Math thing. I think it's over here. No, they're not over there. I was trying to... Listen, I'm working on some merch. I got to actually get the shit printed, but at a minimum, I do think I'll bring some posters to sign, and maybe you guys will pay for them, and then Porch Store might actually make some money. Might be wrong, bro. Start a Discord, and we'll contribute. In the near future, we will be doing the leftover call-in show once I actually get in touch with my buddy Andrew to build out the back end, which also, he's already archived everything, so for some reason, YouTube goes back to full censorship. We will have a home for all of the content. All right, thanks for hanging out with us. Down